Hi, I'm Kim Walker, Director of the School of Music, and today I want to extend a warm welcome to all of you for the MusicHub event. Each week we're sharing new stories from the faculty and the students, all about what inspired them about music and brought them here to Texas Tech University in the very first place. I hope you'll enjoy these inspired stories at least half as much as I do. Thank you and enjoy.
Hello, and welcome to the Music Hub of the Texas Tech University School of Music. My name is Charles Olivier, and I am your host for this episode of a Music Hub Moment. On today's show, we will be listening to an interview with William Pyle. Pyle is an undergraduate student in the School of Music majoring in saxophone performance and music education. This spring, Pyle competed in the 2020 Texas Tech University Concerto Competition and won the woodwind division of the competition, which means he will be performing the Florent Schmitz Legion Opus 66 with the Texas Tech University Orchestra in the 2020-2021 school year. Now let's listen as Pyle guides us through what it takes to prepare and perform in a competition like this. Will, thank you so much for joining us today. We're going to go ahead and jump right into our interview. So what instrument do you play and what degrees are you working on at the School of Music?
I play the saxophone, and I just finished my Bachelor of Music in Performance and in Music Education, and I'll be receiving teacher certification hopefully this month.
Oh, wow. Congratulations. So how did you even get started playing the saxophone?
So like many people in Texas, I started saxophone in sixth grade. When I was in sixth grade, I auditioned and I only wanted to play percussion or saxophone, and they told me I wasn't good enough to play percussion. So I said, I'm going to play the saxophone. So that was pretty much it.
Yeah. And so talk a little bit about kind of the in-between of when you started and then here today. You know, did you do marching band, stuff like that?
Yeah, I was lucky enough to be in a couple of really good programs in San Antonio coming up through public school. And so I did marching band, concert band, the whole thing. And I had some really incredible educators who led me to want to actually pursue music in college.
So you talked a little bit about just now how, you know, you had some educators that inspired you to, do music in college. But let's dive a little bit into that. You know, what really made you want to become a music major, especially both in performance and education?
Well, I started at Texas Tech as a music education major. I was inspired by my music teachers, especially my band director, Greg White, who was actually a Texas Tech grad. And then as I went through my time here at Texas Tech, I began to be drawn more and more to performance and studying saxophone and literature under the tutelage of Professor David Dees. So I decided to add a performance degree so that I can continue to pursue that with more rigor.
So why a double major? What insight do you feel that you've gained by doing both paths, both performance and education?
Well, a lot of the classes, as you know, carry over. But I think the big thing for me doing performance was the opportunity to give an additional recital, and then also the opportunity to take some graduate history level courses in order to really kind of get a taste of how things would develop on the graduate level and how that next level of study kind of looks.
Yeah. So do you think there's anything that they kind of like complement each other with? Like, what have you learned from education that you've applied to performance and vice versa?
I think they absolutely go hand in hand. And I think most people who go into performance always will at some point end up teaching. And the idea that we have to kind of break down what we do as a performer into very small parts in order to teach it to somebody else kind of makes you reflect on your own performance. And I know it's improved my own practice and my own performing just by really starting to think about how I approach things and how I break them down, just like I would in a lesson plan to teach a lesson to, high school.
Yeah, that makes total sense. So why Texas Tech? Why did you choose to study at Texas Tech?
So when I was auditioning back in high school, I auditioned at a lot of schools in Texas, and I think what drew me to Texas Tech was the experience I had in my audition with Professor Dees, and also just some of the faculty here seemed extremely welcoming. It seemed like a place where there wasn't going to be a huge barrier between the faculty and the students. If you needed help or certain direction, they were always going to be there. And I found that to be the case when I got here. So it turned out to be a really great decision for me.
Awesome. So now let's shift gears and talk about the reason why we have you on today. Congratulations on winning the Woodwind Division for the 2020 Texas Tech Concerto Competition. How did it feel, and what did it feel like when you heard the news that you won?
It was great. I was actually in class when I got a text that I won, so I could only celebrate like very, discreetly. But so it was great. And I felt like I had a really, really great performance on that day. So it's really cool to see that pay off.
Did you do anything after class to celebrate, with friends or anything?
Go, thank my pianist and give some high fives. But other than that, not too much. Just got excited that I'll get to be able to play with orchestra.
Yeah, of course. So for the competition, you performed Florence Smith's Légion, Opus 66. Can you explain a little bit of the process for preparing a big work like that?
So with the Schmidt, that piece in particular, I would say all pieces, have similar process, but in that piece in particular, the ensemble is very involved. So the way the solo part and the orchestra, or in this case, the piano part, interact is very, very complex. So I think really learning the piano part and really being able to stop listening to myself and listen to Becca, who I was playing with, in order to kind of form more of a cohesive vision was the biggest thing for that piece in particular. But I would say with all pieces, one of the best things to prepare for this competition is just to record myself and listen really, really objectively, and to find what I need to do more and see what's working. And that's kind of how I approached this piece in particular.
Yeah, so you said listen objectively. What exactly are you listening for? Like rhythm, intonation, what exactly are you listening?
I think a big one is always intonation. As we all know as musicians, intonation is one of the just chief things we have to be concerned with. And the other thing is to see if the musical phrases I'm trying to play actually come off from the other side of the horn. So often I feel like I'm really playing this phrase convincingly, but when I listen back, it doesn't really translate. So being able to know what I want it to sound like and then make sure that it actually sounds like that from the other side is kind of the whole name of the game in something like this, I think.
So you were talking about you have this particular way that you want to sound. What's informing that?
I think there's a few things. That's a great question. And one thing I think is just studying the music and knowing the score and forming that interpretation over time. With the Schmidt, I played that piece. I learned it a couple years ago, and then for concerto competition, I actually relearned it. And seeing how I approach each phrase and trying to make informed decisions based on what is on the page is something that is kind of the whole process. And I find that often my decisions change. So something that I think is working, I go and I play it and I listen to it, and then I talk to Professor Dees about it, and then I talk to Becca about it, and then we kind of come to this idea that eventually is greater than what I would have found on my own or by just playing what I feel or see in the moment. But forming really informed musical decisions is kind of the whole process that I kind of aim to do on a big piece like that.
And so what advice or tools would you give a musician that is preparing for a competition like this?
I think record yourself a lot. And it doesn't have to be a big record the whole movement. Even if you record small chunks, it's still really helpful to kind of figure out exactly how things are sounding. And then the other thing is, I think, memorize the piece. Even if you don't plan on performing it from memory, memorize it, because feel like when I play from memory, I have a better idea of the overall form and arc of the piece. And I can stop using my eyes so much and really open up my ears to the intonation and also the musical ideas.
Yeah, and so you talked a little bit about kind of like finding your own voice within the piece. What advice would you give a student to find their own voice?
I think you can start by listening to recordings, and you can listen to a lot of recordings, and ones that you like, and then ones that you don't like. So having the ability to make a decision, oh, I like the way they play that, or I don't like the way they played that, is kind of the first step in seeing, like, okay, what am I kind of going after? And then once you can kind of discern what you're looking for in a broad sense, I think finding your voice has to come from the music. Really getting inside the music and playing it and experimenting with how you phrase things and how things come off in a lot of different ways until you can really start to express what you believe the music to be expressing innately.
Okay, and so for our final question, but a very, very deep question, what advice would you give your younger self that has just started their saxophone journey?
Man, it's a hard question, because, I think I've done some things well, and I know some things that I would go back and change. But I think one thing is just always listen to yourself carefully and be honest with yourself. I think it's easy to put a lot of pressure on yourself to already be where you want to be. But I think building everything up from a point of honesty and integrity of where you are right now. Because if you can make one, I feel like earlier in my career, I skipped some steps in practicing that I've had to, gone back and correct. And if I had just looked at myself and been like, okay, what can I make better right now, and just build up from that really, really slowly, I think it overall yields just a much better feeling and understanding of what's possible. So I think being honest with myself in practice is probably what I would say, and then maybe play more jazz. But that's besides the point.
Yeah. Cool. Well, Will, thank you so much for coming in today, and we are really looking forward to your performance with the Texas Tech Orchestra and for your piece.
I am too. Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us today. I hope you enjoyed the interview with William Pyle just as much as I did. We look forward to seeing you next Tuesday with another episode of a Music Hub Moment brought to you by the Texas Tech University School of Music. Thank you and have a great week.